Hi, my name is Afika binti Rosidi. The background of the study is highlight the issue of mental health challenges faced by married working women in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. It highlights the high cost of living in the city as a contributing factor to these challenges. It emphasized that married working women often juggle multiple roles and responsibility, both at work and at home, leading to continuous emotional stress. The pressure becomes even greater for women who are fully responsible for child care. The lack of research specifically focusing on mental health among married working women in Kuala Lumpur is acknowledged, and the need to address this information gap is emphasized. The study aims to identify the specific factor influencing the mental health of this demographic and establish relationship between these variables. The finding can be used by employers, policymakers, and healthcare providers to develop strategy and intervention that support the mental well-being of married working women. Overall, it emphasized the significance of understanding and addressing mental health challenges faced by married working women in Kuala Lumpur, with the aim of improving their quality of life and well-being. Next, from problem statement. Mental health challenges significantly impact the well-being of married working women in Kuala Lumpur. Factors such as urbanization, traditional expectation, and the high cost of living contribute to psychological distress in this demographic. However, there is a knowledge gap regarding mental health in this specific context. To address this gap, research focusing on the unique socio-cultural dynamic of Kuala Lumpur is needed to develop targeted strategy for promoting mental well-being among married working women. Urbanization play a role in mental health issues as living in urban area expose individuals to various risk factors such as poverty and environmental problems, leading to increased stress level and poor mental health. Despite offering better work and healthcare access, cities present a complex interplay of detrimental and protective factors affecting mental well-being. Research conducted in Malaysia highlight the high prevalence of depression and anxiety in Kuala Lumpur. This emphasized the urgency of addressing mental health challenges specific to married working women in this area. To bridge the knowledge gap, it is essential to conduct research that examine the factors contributing to mental health issues among married working women in Kuala Lumpur. By understanding the unique socio-cultural dynamic and workplace conditions, targeted strategy and intervention can be developed to promote mental well-being in this population. Married working women in Kuala Lumpur face mental health challenges influenced by socio-cultural dynamics, urbanization, and the high cost of living. Addressing this issue requires research that focus on this specific demographic in the context of Kuala Lumpur. The findings from such research will inform strategy and intervention aimed at promoting mental well-being and improving the overall quality of life for married working women in the city.
Next, we move to the research question. There are 3 questions, which is the first one is, what is the impacts of work-family conflict towards the levels of depressions of married working women living in Kuala Lumpur? Second is, how does the levels of income and savings impact the levels of depressions of married working women who are struggling financially in Kuala Lumpur? And the last one is, what types of job causes working women to experience levels of depressions? For our research objective, we focus to examine work-family conflict affects the level of depressions of married working women living in Kuala Lumpur, and also to investigate the financial difficulties affect the levels of depressions of married working women who are struggling financially working and living in Kuala Lumpur. And lastly, to identify whether job overload affects the levels of depressions of married working women living in Kuala Lumpur. The method of analysis that we use are quantitative method by using descriptive analysis and correlation analysis.
Hello, my name is Adini Suraya binti Azhari. Now, for my part, I will explain about the summary of literature review. We conducted this research study to investigate the relationship between the dependent variable and the independent variable in this case. What we can conclude is that the work-family conflict, financial difficulties, and job overload are the factors for the increase in married working women suffering from depression. There are three hypotheses for this study. The first hypothesis is there is a relationship between the work-family conflict and the level of depression of married working women living in Kuala Lumpur. The second hypothesis is there is a relationship between the financial difficulties and the level of depression of married working women who are struggling financially living in Kuala Lumpur. And the last hypothesis is there is a relationship between the job overload and the level of depression of married working women living in Kuala Lumpur.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Nurul Anaswa binti Juari and I will present about the research methods, particularly under research design, sampling technique and sampling size. Research design consists of 6 items. Firstly, the purpose of the study is hypothesis testing because the researcher wants to better understand the influence of work-family conflict, financial difficulties and job overload factors on the level of depression among married working women who lives in Kuala Lumpur. Next type of investigation used in this research is establishing causal relationship because researchers are trying to see the impacts of factors that contribute to the level of depression among married working women who lives in Kuala Lumpur. Third, the extent of researcher interference in this research is moderate because the researcher wants to establish causal connection between work-family conflict, financial difficulties and job overload to demonstrate that these factors indeed would cause changing in the level of depression. Fourth, the study setting in this research is involve a field experiment in a non-controlled setting in which the researcher collects the data from the genuine respondents who experience depression and meet the requirements for the study from natural settings in Kuala Lumpur without manipulating the circumstances. For unit of analysis, it is individuals because it collects data from each married working woman who lives in Kuala Lumpur. And lastly, time horizon for this study is cross-sectional because the researcher collects all the data from numerous individuals at the same time throughout the months of the June. Now we move to the sampling technique. It refers to non-probability sampling that involves passing a question from one person to another person who then pass it to others, repeating the practice in a chain-like manner. We use snowball sampling because each of researchers distribute the questionnaires to the targeted respondent who then will be asked to spread the questionnaires to other respondents who fit the criteria. Next sample size. It refers to the number of persons or units selected from the population to participate in a research. And our sample size is 93 samples.
The fourth research method is data collection. The data was collected by Google Forms for respondents to answer the questionnaires of the research and distributed using social media like WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Last but not least is data analysis. In order to achieve the objective of this research, there were 3 phases of data analysis included, which is data cleaning through outliers as the first phase. Moving on to the second phase, where reliability and validity tests would be used to establish how well the data fit together. Last but not least, the last phase is descriptive analysis.
The first phase of data analysis is validity test. The selection of a test must take validity into consideration. The term validity describes what the test measures and how well it assesses that characteristic. A test validity is determined in relation to a certain purpose. It might not be valid for other reasons. To ensure the suitability of the data set for factor analysis, it is important to confirm that the KMO value exceeds 0.6 and that the Bartlett test of sphericity value is statistically significant, which means p-value is smaller than 0.05. According to the finding presented, both the Bartlett test of sphericity and the KMO measure of sample adequacy exhibit strong statistical significance. Specifically, in this case, The KMO value is 0.904 and the P value is 0.000. It demonstrating the acceptability of factor analysis. KMO more than 0.8, it means that the items are highly correlated. So, it indicates that the KMO results are meritorious.
Next test under first phase of data analysis is reliability test. It used to determine whether items used to assess the variables using subjective measure are internally consistent or not. For the first variable, that is work-family conflicts, is 0.847, which indicates a good level of internal consistency. Next, second variable is financial difficulties. It produced 0.799 and it shows that it has acceptable level of internal consistency. Third is job overload. It produced 0.910 and it indicates that it has excellent level of internal consistency. And last variable goes to the dependent variable, that is level of depression, and it produced 0.962, also showing that it has excellent level of internal consistency. Therefore, the item used to measure the variables are considered reliable. Furthermore, none of the items were deleted for all the independent and dependent variables.
Next, I will be explaining on the second analysis and the results of the demographic analysis. What is demographic analysis? Well, demographic analysis is to study the population based on factors and characteristics among married working women working and living in Kuala Lumpur. From 99 total respondents, we were able to collect women married and working and living in Kuala Lumpur, which are 95, 92 and 86 respondents consecutively.
Net for mean and standard deviation. In the study, the work-family conflict factor has a mean score of 2.84, while financial difficulty have an average score of 2.83. The mean for job overload is 3.10 and for level of depression is 2.52. On the other hand, for the standard deviation, for the variable of work-family conflict, financial difficulty, job overload and level of depression, the corresponding standard deviation are 0.87, 0.97, 0.92 and 0.98. In the case of work-family conflict, the standard deviation represents approximately 30.6% of the mean, indicating a relatively large deviation from the average. For financial difficulty, the standard deviation is 34.2% of the mean, where its score is perceived as a large deviation. For job overload, the standard deviation is 29.6% of the mean, which is considered a relatively smallest deviation in the study. Lastly, the level of depression is 38.8%, which the score is perceived as the largest deviation among the three variables in the study.
The last analysis they have performed for this study is correlation analysis. The first result between work-family conflict and level of depression is 0.690. This shows that the strength of the relationship is strong, and for this, the null is rejected and alternate hypothesis is accepted. The second correlation between financial difficulties and levels of depression show 0.544, and the relationship between the financial difficulties and the levels of depression is moderate. So, the null is rejected and an alternate hypothesis is accepted. And lastly, for the job overload and levels of depression resulted in 0.562. Also, the strength of the relationship between the job overload and levels of depression is moderate. And the null is rejected and alternative hypothesis is accepted.
Next, for research objective. In the chapter 4 of the study, explore the impact of work-family conflict on the mental health of married working women in Kuala Lumpur. The research revealed a strong association between work-family conflict and depression level among these women. When facing conflict between their work and family responsibility, married working women experience a notable decline in their mental well-being. Work-family conflict emerged as a key contributor to elevate level of depression, highlighting their substantial role in this regard. Consequently, the study established a robust relationship between work-family conflict and an increased risk of depression. This finding align with the previous research that emphasized the significance of work-family conflict in modern economy, particularly for women who face intensified societal expectation.
In conclusion, based on the findings in Chapter 4, particularly under Research Objective 2, it shows that financial difficulty affects the level of depression among married working women who live in Kuala Lumpur moderately. It is because most of the respondents respond to the questionnaires saying that they were only sometimes having trouble with financial, therefore this factor does not highly impact the level of depression of married working women who lives in Kuala Lumpur. That's all from me, thank you.
As can be seen from the finding in Chapter 4, specifically under Research Objective 3, which is to investigate the relationship between the job overload and the level of depression of married working women living in Kuala Lumpur, the relationship is moderate. Therefore, job overload is not the main factor that causes the depression in married working women in Kuala Lumpur. This means it is neither highly nor weakly affecting the dependent variable. This is because, based on the result obtained from the respondent, it shows that half of them do not have any problem in terms of having much work to be done, and they can still manage the time to complete the work. So, this factor does not highly impact the mental health of married working women. Based on the finding of previous research in the literature review, it is clear that the results of this study are not in line with what it found in the literature review.
For the first recommendation, we suggest that married working women to seek for flexible working arrangements. Flexible work schedules, remote work and part-time schedule are examples of flexible work arrangements. Employees with flexible hours have more control over their work schedules. Remote work, also known as working from home, allow employee to work from home or any other location other than the usual office environment. And lastly, for the part-time position require fewer hours than full-time positions. Married working women can better deal with job overload, reduce stress and improve their overall well-being by obtaining and implementing flexible work arrangements.
The second recommendation is for husbands to care for their wives' mental health. After getting married, many women who work face challenges in balancing their personal and professional lives, often requiring mental health support. It is crucial for these women to receive assistance from their families, with their husbands playing a significant role. For example, husbands can create a nurturing and supportive environment where their wives feel comfortable expressing their thoughts, emotions, and concerns. This kind of emotional connections allows women to feel heard, valued, validated, and ultimately enhancing their overall mental well-being.
Lastly, for married working women who want to avoid the depression caused by the job overload, making self-care a priority is an essential technique. Women may successfully cope with the stress, increase the resilience, and promote the mental health by consciously making the time for self-care activities. They can approach both their personal and professional life with more equilibrium, purpose, and general satisfaction if they take care of their own health. Married working women can proactively protect themselves against the negative consequences of job overload and build a happier, more satisfying existence by realizing the value of self-care and making it a non-negotiable part of their life.
In conclusion, this study has focused on examining the level of depression among married working women living and working in Kuala Lumpur. The findings indicates a significant correlation between various variables, including work-family conflict, financial difficulties, and job overload, to the level of depression experienced by these women. Among these factors, work-family conflict emerged as the most prevalent issue. Therefore, the research objectives have been successfully fulfilled, as the study has provided a comprehensive analysis of the factors influencing depression levels in this specific population. That's all from us. Thank you.